in Malaysia, Debunking Prejudices. My name is Rachel Callis, and I'm a political officer here at U.S. Embassy Kuala Lumpur. And as part of my job, I cover the refugees and asylum seekers portfolio. I'd like to give a thank you to all of my political section and public affairs section colleagues for all of their help in organizing this event. And I'd also like to thank our moderator, Eamon, as well as all of our presenters for taking the time out of their busy schedules to join us and share their experiences and expertise on living as, working with, and supporting refugees in Malaysia. And finally, to all of the folks that are out there in the audience, thank you for tuning in, logging on, and joining us for what I know will be a very engaging discussion. We're hosting this event to honor World Refugee Day, which is commemorated each year on June 20th. And the United States is actually the largest single provider of humanitarian assistance worldwide. We work with UNHCR, the ICRC, IRM, UNICEF, and others. And United States humanitarian assistance reaches tens of millions of displaced and vulnerable people worldwide. We provide access to food, water, shelter, healthcare, education, and more to some of the 70 million people globally who are forcibly displaced. Through the Department of State and through the Julia Taft Refugee Program, U.S. Embassy in Kuala Lumpur has actually been able to work with many small NGOs in Malaysia to support refugees, including some represented here on this panel today. So we look forward to continuing our joint partnerships and our efforts on behalf of refugees, asylum seekers, and other vulnerable families in Malaysia. So without further ado, I'd like to thank everyone again for participating and tuning in. And it's my pleasure to turn it over to Eamon to help us get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's panel discussion on refugees living in Malaysia, Debunking Prejudices, hosted by the U.S. Embassy Kuala Lumpur. My name is Aiman, and I'll be the moderator for today. And joining me on the panel today is our esteemed guests. First of all is Sharifah Shakira, who is the founder and director of Rohingya Women Development Network, Suzanne Ling, co-founder of Picha Eats, Mahda Tahir, event coordinator of ICANN Malaysia, Arya Elise, program officer of Tenaga Nita, and also Cikgu Muhammad Azmi Abdul Hamid, who is the president of Majlis Perundingan Pertubuhan Islam Malaysia, or MAPIM. Thank you everyone for joining us today. So before we begin, if you have any questions or thoughts that you would like to share with our panelists today, you can send it to us via the Facebook comment section. Now, I'd like to begin with this question first, directed for everyone. So a few years ago, it seemed like Malaysians were keen or open to helping out refugees, right? We wanted to help our Muslim brothers and sisters, wanted to help out victims of injustices and war and conflict back in the home countries. But recently, it looked like there's been an increase or perhaps a louder negative sentiment against refugees. So my question is, what happened and where is this negative sentiment coming from? Maybe Cikgu Azmi, you can start first.
All right. Thank you, Ayman. Forgive me, this technical thing is a bit problematic. Well, just to be very brief, I think there is always this situation when things get a little bit rough in terms of economics, and then you have these unexpected events of certain crises hitting the country, and then this sense of telling that we should the citizens should come first, and there's any incidences of a negative or seem to be negative by any foreigners, then that sentiment starts to prop up. We have to then see these people who came to Malaysia as problematic, especially those who are illegal. But then I have a sense also, as you said, Ayman, before there is a heightened mood of really wanting to help, really want to be sympathetic, but there was this outburst, especially to one particular ethnic in Malaysia. Probably all of you know. But then this thing seems to have some elements of I can say as an orchestrator thing. You know, it went into the within the netizens, and all of a sudden there was some echoing of people start, slandering, start attacking the refugees. So, and then that sentiment came down all over, and they say that this is a majority voice, which I doubt very much. So I think plus the situation is very pressing. Plus, there are some elements within, in or outside of Malaysia who wants this to bust. So that means then it created this situation, which is quite unprecedented. That's my view.
And Mahda, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to echo the same views as me just now. In fact, at the start of the lockdown, there was a lot of help pouring in for the refugees. There was a lot of help pouring in for. I mean, we're talking Rohingya specifically. That I work with. There was a lot of help. There was a lot of help in terms of giving them provision. And in fact, it went on as well, even after the sentiment started. And it's an isolated incident of one of the Rohingya refugee leaders, demanding certain things from the Malaysian government, which he has denied anyway. So, and again, I echo Azmi saying that there are elements, the anti-Rohingya elements that are working tirelessly to discredit the Rohingyans here. So, but generally, I feel like Malaysians are still sympathetic. My donors, my helpers, or my contributors are still, they didn't stop. They continue, and we continue. We got a lot of generous donation. I think people kind of like. There are a small group, like I say, a small group that riled up the sentiment and blow it up through social media, and you see posters a bit here and there. No doubt it affects some of the feeling of security for the refugees. But I think, yeah, it all stems up from them one isolated incident, and I think it's a phase. I really hope so. It's a phase. It will die down because majority of Malaysians are kind-hearted people. They still help. They don't buy into the sentiments, and there's a small group of people that which to me is strange, because at that time I would see people supporting certain, the same people who were angry that Muslims are not allowed to be refugees in other countries are now calling, asking Rohingya to go out. So these are people without really any standing. It's a phase for them. They will get out of it and they will support another cause, in the future. So yeah, I don't think it's something that we should harp about and make it any bigger, but we should mention it. Yeah, that's my thought.
And just a question for Suzanne, based on the refugee families that you've worked with, right? I'm just wondering, has the COVID-19 situation or the anxiety surrounding the movement control order, has that perhaps contributed to what seems like a louder negative sentiment against refugees?
I think I can, with the chefs that we work with, which is quite a small group of people, so that's about 15 chefs. So from the chef that we work with, thankfully, the community that they are in, they didn't personally receive too much negative sentiment. But we do see one of the negative side effect that came from the negative sentiment, which was, there's this like whole hatred happening on social media. And what happened was, about 3 weeks ago, one of our chefs, because of all these prejudices and also stereotypes, one of our chefs were actually helping one of their cousins to sell off a second-hand bike, and they were assumed to be thieves at the first glance. Like a local person just say, "Oh, where did you steal this bike from?" Because the whole stereotype towards the community has been so negative that our chef's husband actually got beaten up really badly by a local because they assumed that he stole the bike, even though it was a second-hand bike that they owned for a while. So things like this is, sometimes we think that things that we say on social media that creates negative sentiments is just on social media, but what we sometimes don't think beyond is that all these negative sentiments does cause us to see the world differently, and this kind of prejudice and stereotype will harm another person's life. So I think that is what came out from this whole negativity that actually affected one of our chefs. Yeah.
And so I have a question for Sharifah. I'm just wondering, do you know if these stories of negative sentiments or prejudices, has it reached the home countries of the refugees? And also, how does that affect the perception or the decision making of the refugees before they come to Malaysia?
Thank you, Ayman. I think yes, it have reached to their home countries, and these people are scared. They are scared, but the genocide is still happening. So what can they do, right? So for them, is rather trying to find better place, hope than live in a survive in a genocide, which you don't know when you will be killed. And I personally think that until the root cause is not solved, the genocide does not end. I personally believe people will flee the country. Even though this the scary part of these things about community, my people are hearing, they are aware of it, yet they wanna, I think they have no choice.
And Elise, do you find that to be the case with the refugees that you work with through Tenaga Nita?
So we're not too certain about how has these news of increased xenophobia been perceived at the home country. So the communities that I primarily work with are the Burmese ethnic groups. We do, again, like Sharifah said, right, it's the alternative of having to deal with genocide, extreme persecution and violence, as opposed to the challenges, however difficult it is here in Malaysia. It is a life and death situation as well. But because this rise of xenophobia especially happened during COVID-19, and with the borders closed, and there was even no irregular movements of asylum seekers coming in or out, so we can't really for sure say. I think a lot of people are more preoccupied on something else, but we do hear some rumors of quite a few refugees in Malaysia because of all the issues that they're facing, loss of livelihood. They're extremely afraid to leave the house even for a second, because we've heard of arrests of people even going out to receive food aid, to throw their rubbish, and they get arrested. Extortion is increasing. A lot of them, a significant amount, I can't say a lot, are actually considering to go back home, to be repatriated as well, to paint a picture on how precarious the situation is here right now.
And before we move on to exploring the experiences of the refugees themselves, right, I just want to ask a general question. What is the appeal of Malaysia? And why do what is Malaysia's appeal, and why do refugees come to Malaysia? Maybe Mahda, you can answer that one.
Yeah, I think we have about the latest number in April, about 200,000 refugees in Malaysia, which is 150,000 of them are from Myanmar, and about, I think, most of the numbers are from Rohingya. So you get majority of refugees in Malaysia are Muslim. So for I will speak for the Rohingyans because I work with them there. It's very near. It's they are coming here with unseaworthy boat, so it's the closest country to get. And the Malaysian government has always been loud about addressing Rohingyan issue in ASEAN itself with the Myanmar government. Of course, the spiritual pull, and Malaysian being Muslims, so Myanmar being Muslims, it's a very comfortable country to come to. And also, I think generally Malaysians are very sympathetic to refugee issues. It's been years, and even since the Bosnians, Palestinians issue back in the 80s, the Bosnian back in the 80s. So this impression of Malaysia and also makes it appealing, and there's also stories how Malaysian accept refugees, refugee in certain areas. You would see in rural areas, Rohingyan refugees are more accepted, are more welcome. My experience in Langkawi with a Rohingyan refugee and Langkawi local was amazing. I feel like the real integration within the Langkawi village people So there's all this, there's much more appeal, I think, like maybe Shakira can also add up this, the appeal. So yeah, and like I hope we stay that way, that Malaysia is a place where other refugee seekers feel like it's a safe place, that people are willing to accept, and those who are, running away from trouble. So yeah, I think that's some of the appeal. I think there's more. Maybe Shakira can add up to that.
Yeah, Sharifah, do you have any more thoughts on that, about the appeal of Malaysia?
Yes, I think I agree with what he have said. I think it's also, the beauty of Malaysia, the beauty of the country, with a lot of culture, how safe it is, being with people. Like I personally, feel much safer being in Malaysia. We are persecuted because we are Muslim in my country, and, to practice our religion is very difficult. Even our mosques are being locked, it's been destroyed, and it is very difficult, to call ourselves a Muslim as well. So yes, I think it's also because it is Muslim, like you said, and I think it's also because of the, we feel safe. The hospitality of the people, is very accepting, and yeah.
Can I ask you about, your experiences when coming to Malaysia, right? So you came to Malaysia when you were very young with your family. So I'm just wondering, what was your experience like at that time, and what was it like for you and your family coming to Malaysia?
Coming to Malaysia, we don't have any choice. I was very young, like you mentioned. My father, first he have to flee from the country because he saw the military was brutally killing other Rohingya people and buried them in the military camp. So because he is the witness, they start chasing him. Without returning home, he have to flee from the country. He have been struggling, to the neighbor's country, and he ended up coming to Malaysia. My mom, being a single mother with 3 kids, left behind, living in a, surrounded by the Buddhist community in the village. Nobody's there to protect her and her children. It was very tough. It's like Elise have mentioned, it's either you die or you stay like that. So we Rohingya people, like other human being, everyone have hope to live. Everyone, never want to leave their hands just like that, life just like that to the death. So my mom, started fleeing from the country to join my father, who's already in Malaysia at that time. We don't have any documents back in Myanmar. Our citizenship had been confiscated. We have become stateless within our country. Our movement have been, restricted. Literally, we are living in a open prison. We just can't do anything without the permission of the government. So from very difficult situation, she took us. We have to put our life in a trafficker's hand or smuggler hands just to escape from the death in Myanmar. Again, I will say put our life again in the death, in the sea, in the jungle, to escape, to find a safer place. It was a story. Unfortunately, it's a long story, but I just want to say everyone's life is like that. After putting my life and my siblings, my mom life in the hands of trafficker, don't know the strangers, the men, who can easily do many things. Many people die in the sea, killed, raped, tortured, and we entered Malaysia, with a big hope that, we will be safe, our family will be reunited. So that's the story of me fleeing the country. And there are more horrible story, unimaginable life story that many refugees, when they coming running from the country, that they go through.
And I guess I have a follow-on question for both you, Sharifah, and Elise, through your work with Margarita. So we've seen and we've heard the harrowing stories faced by refugees, right? Not just from the home country, but also their journey coming to Malaysia and perhaps in Malaysia as well. So are refugees prone to things like exploitation and trafficking, either in the home country or in Malaysia?
If I can go ahead. I think yes, trafficked, almost everyone got exploited by the traffickers. I have been working with a lot of trafficking victims, especially females group. The women have been sold, to as a child bride, to the marriages. This woman been tortured, kept. Many women I have seen, arrive Malaysia being pregnant, doesn't know who the person is, because there's a lot of traffickers, take advantage of this woman, female. It's not only female, but it's also male that also been sexually abused. So traffickers give a big hope, in a home country, saying, giving a lot of good pictures about the host countries, about the journey, and when they laugh, that's it. Their lives in the hand of traffickers, have no choice, no way to escape. So we think trafficking issues, especially on Rohingya, have been stopped, but I think is like I said earlier, it will not stop until the root cause has been solved. Traffickers are finding different ways, all the alternative ways to traffic people to the host countries, not only in Malaysia but also in like neighbors country like Thailand, India, Indonesia, like other country, even Pakistan and furthermore. So the exploitation of people, traffickers, they just want money, and yeah.
I think I can speak about the exploitation that usually occurs in Malaysia for various reasons. Access to justice for refugees and asylum seekers here is quite limited, especially because of their documentation status, which is not legally recognized. And then maybe also because it's such a diverse community of refugees, right, from various countries. Some of them may come from communities that don't know about human rights, or communities who are here, who are being hosted, and they don't know the laws here as well. So they could be exploited by a variety of people, whether it's their own employers, whether it's the police, or people pretending to be the police and other authorities. It could be normal citizens as well. We've heard about scam cases, people posing as real estate agents who take in amounts of money, and then turns out that they aren't actually real agents. And then that is within the external realm, right? But what about internally as well, within the community, being a woman, being a child, having your rights violated there as well. If you don't have the awareness, the foundation within your own community or family to even know that you have these rights, that you should have the right to seek justice and redress in these situations, then you are often targeted. And we do see this a lot because of the case management that we run in Tenaga Nita.
And speaking of rights, right? So you mentioned a bit about access to justice. Is there a fear among refugees to seek justice when they face any kind of issues?
I think to some extent, depending on the documentation that they have, right there. If you've gone to UNHCR to seek for refugee status, you might have one of three documents, which is one is the appointment card, so you haven't sat for your interview and your status hasn't been determined yet, or you may have a UC letter that's an under consideration letter that says you're an asylum seeker, they're still considering whether you are a refugee or not, or you have the card that says that you are a refugee. So I think based on these three, some of them might feel a bit more confident with the card, because most authorities do see this as a form of documentation, even though it's not legally recognized. Versus especially the appointment card, then a lot of them will not feel as confident. Then you have some asylum seekers who may have gone for an appointment, or they're registered on the website to get an appointment and have not, so then they don't have any documentation or got rejected for the case. So then they might hold community cards, and these are not really recognized. So a lot of these people wouldn't then seek justice in that normal sense of going going to a police station and filing a report. I suppose then they have also other forms of avenues of justice. They can come to certain NGOs like ourselves. So if it's employer disputes, unpaid salaries, Tenagita or NGOs like Assignment Access as well, we assist with that, where we can go in as the middle person to look at the facts of a case and then to try to get the employers to pay back for that amount. But of course, it's not always a success. Because a lot of these employers also know this refugee was not supposed to work anyway. So if I don't pay this person, you can't really do anything. By right, that is their right to redress as well. Under the Employment Act, we have to protect all workers, whether or not their documents or not. We have precedent cases in court to show that refugees have actually gotten redress as well. But then the problem is that is the enforcement of these laws actually consistent as well?
And on the topic of other basic needs, right, like jobs and education, so refugees in Malaysia lack that sort of access to legal employment and formal education. How are they then integrated into Malaysian society if they cannot access these things? Maybe Cikgu Azmi, you can answer that one.
Okay, thank you, Ayman. Yes, I mean, we do know that the limitations, or I should say, not accepting children of the refugees to go to the government schools, the public schools, and whatnot. So this limitation has been around. The only argument is that we are not obliged. The government says that we are not obliged because we are not party to the Refugee Convention. But that is another argument. I mean, we can always come back to that, and we want things to be changed. On the aspect of occupations or jobs, again, you know, refugees without documents, they're exposed to exploitation. They do get jobs in a way that they will have a kind of a verbal agreement with the employers, and they get the job. But then they have to run a risk of not being paid, as Alice was saying. But other than that, I mean, the situation is bad to me because they are very susceptible and very vulnerable to lots of people and even some officials who take advantage, and they are in a situation, they are in a trap. It's either they have to submit to whatever the demands of these people, or they get arrested and they'll get punished by the so-called law. On the other hand, there are refugees, as Mahathir was saying, you know, if you go on the outskirts of cities or in rural areas, they're much comfortable. People are willing to give them jobs, odd jobs, and they're able to survive, and they sort of been accepted, and they're quite integrated in the community. That is not the case when they are in the cities. They're always been raided. You know, if they do some, if they're exposed on the roads, if they, you know, they are on certain vehicles, they are very, very exposed to checks and raids by the police. So I think the situation is not that good in that sense, but there is always spaces for them to always seek help, and refugees coming to us, for instance, to my organization, they're trying to get help. We do not give any legal assistance, but we'll try to talk to the authorities. We even talk to the landlords. We talk to people and explain to them, and the situation seems to calm down. But I think it is still not in any way good in the sense that in the future. But let me just come back a little bit. When people are saying, you know, they came here, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the early 1980s, since the 1982 Citizenship Act in Myanmar was enacted in Burma, and then they started the exodus. And we were very sympathetic. They were all these years, 1982 up until now, we were accepting, and the government was giving very good signals to help the Rohingyas. There's a lot of agencies always sympathetic. So I think if the situation calms down and the government give correct signals, I think chances of employment, chances of giving them a space for education and healthcare, I think there is. But then again, the workings of it between UNHCR, the NGOs, the human rights NGOs, and also the communities, and also the community of the refugees, there will be, to me, there will be a prospect that we can go into this more healthier situation of the refugees in Malaysia.
So we have a question here from Irasa asking, as a newly launched refugee network or organization, like, where can they find funding or supporters for their cause? And I think this is a question that a lot of you can answer. So maybe I can direct it to Mahda first.
Oh, okay, Aiman, that's a very tough question. Money is very, show me the money is very hard. So, but do not be disheartened. You can start small. You can start organically. When we started ICANN, we just did it at our own capacity. We pull our resources together and basically helped a school, a Rohingya refugee school that's already been set up by Rohingyans, but they needed help. So we came in, we started helping. And in time, we start exploring where are the sources of income, fundings. The reason, like as Malaysia, refugees are not recognized by the government. There's really, like not much or nearly nothing directly that you can get from the government. But there are corporations, there are individual philanthropists, there are international foundations, international organization that protects refugees. There's a lot of grant that you can look into, or a lot of funding that you can look into. And you can, like we have young people in our team. Crowdfunding is very popular as well. You can look into that, and there's a lot of creative way to actually raise funds for them. It is tough, to have a steady fundraising program. You might need to take time before you find those resources. But do not worry too much. You just go out there, like even raise fund within your own family. If somebody your own family, each member of the family or your immediate family can, give in 50 ringgit a month. That's a commitment, and you use that, and that will kind of like will have a snowball effect. Believe you me, like when you work like that, when you help people, help will come to you to help them more. So but yeah, you have to do the legwork. You have to do a lot of research. There is money out there to be found. Internationally, there's money. Embassies, you can go to embassies. There's a lot of embassies that, have allocate funding for refugee work. So yeah, do a bit of research, but, start whatever you can do. Even when you don't, we are looking for volunteers, hook up to ICANN, we're looking for volunteers, interns. You can start there and start learning the rope.
And Aiman, can I just a little bit injection that I want to inject. Aside from this funding, there is always also the assistance in kind. We get a lot of that. Every time there's something that, and then we start going around, people donating food, there are people donating clothes, that. So that's part of lessening the burden of the funding. But then again, institutions like zakat in the religious affairs, there's a lot of, we can approach. Some states even go out of the jurisdiction, like Perlis, they allow zakat to be given if people all over the country, not only in Perlis, and also among non-Muslims. There are some decree that we discuss. But then again, I think the fundraising, like we have in our experience, is that people adopting. For instance, we have a school, and then we declare to people, these are the children we need, who wants to adopt them, and they fund for a year or maybe 2 years for that child. So that also is, in a way, complements the things that we are lacking. So I think that adds up to what Mahandara is saying. Thank you.
And Sharifa, I just want to ask your experiences. So, as a refugee, because you founded the Rohingya Women Development Network, right? So, were there any kind of unique challenges that you faced when you were setting up the network?
Okay, I think I have a lot to say, but I will briefly say it. In Malaysia, we all know that refugees are not recognized, right? So refugees are recognized as illegal migrants, even though they are illegals, even though they are refugees. So when they are illegals, nothing is legal, right? In law. So refugee organization like us, like CBO, like us, are not recognized, by the law. So we don't get fundings from, anywhere. When I started Advocacy in 2016, I literally have no fundings from anybody. I have to work, full time, and then do my work at the same time full time, to help my people. I was the first one to become a teacher in my center to teach my people. I was the first one, doing cleaning in the office. I was the first one, trying to talk to NGOs like UNHCR and other local NGO, try to give us funding and stuff. It was very tough for few years, and it was not easy. So and we are refugees organization, we are not big NGOs, people doesn't recognize us, so it was very, very tough. At the same time, the work is very important because we are the connection between the local NGO and the community, because we have the information, we have the resource to go to the community, give help other people. So it's very important. So slowly, alhamdulillah, Al-Dawudian is now it's not NGO, but it's kind of like legally we have a protection, so the fundings come from, the first funding we get is from US Embassy, because I was nominated by the US Embassy for International Women's of Courage Award in 2019. 19, yeah. See, I even forgot. So because they get know me, know my work, and they know it's important, so we get the fundings from them for a year. And it's like the Canada Embassy give us fundings. But now how we survive is like because we could make it legal, and my partner, like my friend in Nasha, she's trying to talk to the locals, she's trying her best to do the fundings. But yes, it is very difficult. So even because of the pandemic, current situation in Malaysia, and also because of the hate speech, and xenophobia towards, especially on Rohingya refugees, fundings being, I wouldn't say fundings, I think donation being, people stop giving donation to us. We have already few experiences where, some people come, forward saying that, okay, we will raise fund for your people for these things, example for food distributions or a project. And, we need information from you about your people, this and that. So we do provide information and everything. When the funding was raised, they message us saying that, oh, I'm sorry, we cannot give you this money, we cannot help you with this food, or something like this. It's because people are, the hate is so huge out there that we afraid that if we help you this time, we might not able to do our work, so we are going to give this funding to another refugee community. So these things are already be happening. It's already not once, it's actually few times already. So it's sad, it's it's just so sad things like this happen. So it's very difficult for us to do our work, even because we with the MCO, we close our office, our center. I mean, we have to follow the law, but even that, now things are slowly opening. People are afraid to go outside of the house to attend the classes, to achieve to their goals, because you don't know, when you go out of the house, you don't know what will happen, and we don't want to risk anybody. So we are trying to, do whatever things possible remotely, physically. Yeah. And mostly in our own capacity.
I hope that answers your question, Irasa. Thank you for sending it to us. And if any other of our viewers who are watching through Facebook, if they have any other questions or comments, please feel free to send it over to us. Now, I want to move on to the topic of hate speech, disinformation, xenophobia, and other related issues, right? But before that, I figured, it'll be best if we talk about or address some of the common criticisms or concerns that people tend to express regarding refugees in Malaysia. So for this first one, I want to direct it to Suzanne, as someone who works for an organization that creates jobs for refugees, right? So one of the sort of criticisms or concerns that some have expressed is that, with an increase of inflow in refugees into Malaysia, coupled with perhaps an economic slowdown in the country, that would lead to a greater competition for jobs among refugees and Malaysians. So what are your thoughts on that?
All right, so I would say things now are quite different post MCO. So I can't speak for now yet because I'm not very sure how are things now. But I would say honestly, before MCO, even though people keep saying that, oh, if we take in more refugees, they will be competing with the locals with jobs. But the truth is, those are jobs that many locals won't take up. And even with foreign workers, we still get a lot of calls, like for Picha, we get a lot of calls from restaurant owners, even from factories, from places who ask us, oh, how do you work with refugees? Can we work with them too? Because we have this issue of lack of manpower. There isn't enough workers and the locals don't want to work. So I would say that there are a lot of opportunities around that the locals are not actually looking at those jobs. And when we allow refugees to work, it actually changes a lot of things. So if we allow refugees to work, we are not saying, oh, just let them in and work, but there can be framework put into place. There can be legalization put into place. Even employers are willing to pay for permit and things like that. They just want to give an opportunity for the refugees who are here, who are already here. So it's quite frustrating. Why can't we allow them to work where they are already here? And that results in a lot of businesses secretly hiring refugees, and that puts the employer in risk. So that there are two kinds of different employers. As just now Sharifah mentioned, some employers, they do exploit the workers, so those are the negative types. But there are some genuine employers who really want to give opportunities, but that also put them in risk. So I would say about job opportunity, honestly, to me, personally, I can just speak for myself that I think that that isn't the biggest issue, because we already have so many foreign workers. And the reason why there are foreign workers is because there is a need in manpower, because the locals are not taking up those jobs. So I would say, to debunk this myth, is that they are definitely not competing with the locals, if that is the concern. Yeah.
All right. And the next concern, I want to address it to Mr. Azmi. So another common concern that people have is that, Malaysia's resources and capacity is already too stretched, and we cannot take in any more refugees. So what are your thoughts on those concerns?
Okay, sorry, Armand. Can you just phrase that a little bit, just 1 second, because I got caught off.
Sure.
Iman?
Yeah, so one common concern that is usually expressed is that Malaysia's resources and capacity is already too stretched. Therefore, Malaysia cannot take in any more refugees. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about that, or responses to that?
Well, it has to be, given clear, I should say, figures of how stretched we are. How do you quantify it? Whether you're really stretched, because there's never been explained. Is it like we are what? We are also having people in detention, whether it's because they've been sentenced. We have detention camps for even illegals, and they say that they come up with a figure, certain amount of money has been spend, and therefore we have been spending too much. But then half of the spending of our prisons are also the local people. So I do not really understand the really what they call overstretched. Um, like Susan was saying, I agree, there's no competition issue on the jobs, because a lot of jobs have been rejected by even Malaysians. So employers are, asking for permits. It's quite difficult, and people are very stringent. So I think the issue is not really about being too much stretched of our resources. The resources are there. They are very, also I can say, very under or wrong managed resources, whether it's in terms of funds or, or even land, our land use. We have a lot of lands that are idle. We don't have locals, really doing it. So those are resources unused. So the question is, what are we stretched of? It's because that we have a security issue that we have to employ more personnel to it, which is also not the case. So I have a big question on this, but I can also be fair to the government, to Malaysia, as also now with, as you said, Mahdar was saying about 200,000. I think it is more. These undocumented people around is more than that. So Malaysia becomes the kind of the convergence point. We have, according to my numbers, probably more than 15 countries of people coming to Malaysia. And because the situation of the whole world is really intense, and you will expect more people to come, and Malaysia is one of destination that they want to come. So probably in that sense, with other countries also having their own policies on allowing people to come, refugees to come, probably Malaysia says that we have to regulate this. Regulation is not a problem. I think everybody wants it to be regulated. We don't like open the seas and everyone can come easily. We need people to come, we accept them, and we sort of coordinate the help, coordinate the assistance, getting these people protected. Those are the kind of resources that we need. Other than that is the economic resources or livelihood and the everyday livelihood. I don't think our country is in that situation of overstretched. So that's my comment on this issue. Thank you.
And Mahda, you wanted to add something just now?
Yeah, this question is very interesting to me because just recently, a few months ago, we had a discussion and we were really talking about this, that our resources are being stretched, thing. But and we dealt with it, like, I think we're on two level. One is the moral responsibility, and then the other one is spiritual aspect of it. Well, the moral responsibility is like basically, I mean, this happens in Europe as well. Like every countries will say that they are stretched, even during good times economically. Because but you see in European countries when the Syrian refugee fled to Europe, they had issues with their population, whether to open it or not. But at the end, it's a moral responsibility for them to take the refugee in, and whatever the resources capacity they have to work around it. Now, as such, Malaysia. I'm not talking about just the government. We usually like to look at the government. I think the government has been very open with accepting refugee, but the population itself to ask that question whether this thing is a myth or really worries you. Because one is a moral responsibility, no matter how our economic situation is. Number two is the spiritual. Malaysia is generally a religious country. Most of Malaysian probably adherence to a religious one religion is not the other. And me, like speaking as a Muslim myself, and Rohingyans and majority of refugees are Muslims, and also the non-Muslim refugees, like the Chins and all that. It's we need to have this belief that the resources is not ours. The resources is from the Almighty. The resources are there and it should be enough for everyone. And if we can learn how to optimize it. So, like what earlier Suzanne was saying, the refugees are already here, and especially with the Rohingyans, unlike other refugees, they are stateless. Means they have no right to returns at the moment. They have no document. They can't prove that they're Myanmaris, so they're going to be here for a long time. So let's give them education. Figure out a way. Let's give like Suzanne said, give a framework so that they can be part of the stimulus of our economic system. And with that, we need to give them education. We can utilize their skills. I mean, we can know that, but we need to give them, because, for instance, Rohingyans since 1962, they have not been given any education in Myanmar. So you can imagine a nation of people who haven't getting any education since 1962. But yeah, we can give them education. We can use their skills here, and we do see that. If you go to, for instance, in Kuala Lumpur, you go to Jalan Silang. It's a very vibrant economic commerce going on, and mainly are shops run by Myanmaris and Bangladeshis. So there's a fact here that is shared by IDEAS, Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs. It says granting refugees currently residing in Malaysia the right to work will have a positive impact on the economy and public finances. They estimated that if refugees are given the right to work, their contribution to the annual GDP would increase to over 3 billion by 2024 through higher spending. The wider the economic impact, including indirect effects such as lower business costs, could be substantially larger. So in the long term, investment in education for refugees alongside the local population will see substantial dividends to the country. We estimate that under a scenario where refugees are granted access to education on par with locals, their contributions to GDP could increase to over 6.5 billion each year by 2040, which annual contribution in taxes over 250 million. So we need to look at it from that side. Rather than say, oh, it's being stretched, we're being stretched, we don't have the capacity, because we are not the source of our provision. We can work with people, like we believe God has sent refugees here, whether they're Muslim or not, because these are the people that will help you out. Your provision is there in this country, and that's why you made it on those boats. So I think for us, we look at it at a moral responsibility and from the spiritual aspect as well. Thank you, Aiman, for the time.
And Elise, did you want to add something about that as well?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to bring up the ideas, findings as well about the contributions that refugees can come. I am of the belief that there's a saying that goes around, treating refugees as the problem is the problem. When we ignore this significant population of people in our country, then there is a drain, because there is no proper cycle of resources, right? When refugees have the legal right to work, now this is income that then we know is existing, that we can take account of. When they have higher purchasing power, then they're going to be taking in more goods and more services. Then we need to produce more, right? And that's how we create more jobs for Malaysians as well. And looking at the diverse population of refugees, now these are people from different kinds of countries, different ethnicities, different environments. So yes, you have a majority who have skill that can fill up the labor shortages in areas such as farming. These people who have so much skill to give, the people who are building our skyscrapers are also some refugees. But then you also have a small population of Middle Eastern and North African refugees as well. Some of them are educated. A few years ago, we were talking about the issue of brain drain in Malaysia, right? So we do have some gaps that we need to fill up here as well. At the end of the day, if we choose to say that we'll ignore these group of people, they need to fend for themselves when they're not able to even go to the hospital to get treatment, that's a public health issue. When we have children who are already finding it difficult to find identity in this country, who are alienated, who cannot go to school, and then develop mental health issues, self-esteem issues, when they feel alienated, then what is their reason to be a part of this country? What is their reason to abide by the laws? People like to say that we want to scapegoat them and say that they create crimes, they're social ills. I disagree to that, because I think if you find any refugees who do commit social ills and crimes, then I would like to say, look at the Malaysians who have as well. Look at the tourists, look at the expats. It's the same for every community. There are always going to be bad apples, but for a majority of the part, there are a lot of good apples. And when we integrate them, we get to utilize onto all the expertise, all the resources that they also have. And at the end of the day, when we look at Malaysia as a diverse country, a lot of us have been raised as Malaysians to value the diversity, the differences that we have. That is our strength compared to a lot of different countries. I think it'll be very interesting to see a Malaysia that also includes refugees, whether temporarily or permanently, however controversial that is, say even temporarily, how beautiful and much more colorful this country could be, how much more we could grow it beyond where we are right now.
And just touching on the idea about jobs for refugees, right? Irasa asks on Facebook, is there any chance that refugees can work legally in the future? And my follow-on question to that one is, what would be the approach to get the buy-in from lawmakers and the government to allow refugees to work in Malaysia? Maybe Elise can go.
I believe currently the government recently announced that they are considering to grant refugees the right to work, right? But we've also seen quite a few work pilot programs over the last few years. One of the previous governments had done a pilot program allowing Rohingyas to work in the plantation sector, and they had, I think, opened quite a huge number of job vacancies, up to a few thousand, but only a few hundred of them actually came in. But I think that's a different issue. It's a lot of cultural issues that were not enough community engagement to understand that this is not a community that can work in the environment as well as others. And then we've seen it come over and over again, governments saying that, yes, we pledge to give refugees the right to work and whatnot. But this current government has tasked the Ministry of Human Resource into looking at the issues surrounding the right to work. Currently, we also have Gardenia, who's employing quite a few refugees as well to cover the labor shortages within that area. I think there are a lot of programs with certain companies that are allowing it, but I think we also need, hopefully, when Human Resource Ministry starts looking at it in depth, they're going to be engaging with grassroots organizations that work with communities, but most especially with the communities themselves. We need to understand them better and understand the skills and resources that they have. We also must understand the cultural context. Now, the failure, in my opinion, of why that plantation project didn't work was because you're asking Rohingyas, who are very family-centric, to leave their homes, to go work in plantation sectors, to not be with their family anymore, right? So that was not really the best move, versus you could have directed that program to, say, some of the Burmese ethnic group who already know farming skills, who are familiar with plantations, and a lot of them are also single and don't have children and are able to live away from their family. So I think there definitely is talks, there is opportunity for us to recognize refugees' right to work, but it's a matter of whether are we going to really do it right this time, or are we going to run another policy and another pilot project that will likely fail again because we don't have enough community engagement.
So, I mean, the community engagement, right, I guess could be hindered by some of the negative perceptions or sentiments that they already pre-existingly have. My question to Sharifah is, what has the refugee experience been like in terms of dealing with these prejudices or misinformation that are targeted towards refugee communities?
Sure. Actually, it was, to be very honest, the hate crimes, the xenophobia is very, very sudden, and it was very, very shocking. I live in Malaysia for 21 years, almost half of my life I have spent there. The Malaysia, the home, that I have seen is very different now. I was, I never imagined, these things will happen like this much. To be very honest, I am, it might be very controversial, and but I am, in me, the Malaysia exists in me. And there are many people, especially young people who was born there and lived there, almost half of, their entire life. They become Malaysian themselves, because we live in that culture, we live in that society. Even in my house, our younger siblings, they've been here for 5 years, 6 years, 4 years now. Yet they are still speaking Malay, and there are many people that I know in United States or in other country that they got resettled. They're still carrying the culture, still carrying the language, and very proud of that. So seeing what happened to the, especially targeting the Rohingya refugees is heartbreaking, and many people, because of that, Rohingya people especially have lost their jobs. There are many families that I know, keep in touch with me, was evicted from the house. One of the reasons because they are not able to pay the rental because they have no job. Another way, one is because of the hate crimes. Many people, I think, in my personal things, personally, I have been observing from the social media. I think people who are commenting, or sharing information, they don't understand or they don't know the real situation of Rohingya people in detail. I think very simple, like one of the questions they always ask about, go back to your country, this and that. I think the very basic that we cannot go back to our country, and everyone, including many people that I know, my friends, my relative, want to go back to country, the home country, Myanmar, if everything is settled there. And saying, and also they are confusing Rohingya situation with undocumented migrants. So they kind of like not understanding what is the Rohingya situation exactly. I think we have to create information about these people and stuff like that. Another thing is, I also believe that the Burmese military troops might, the cyber crimes, they might pretend using the social media, to fire up the hate campaign, or to fire up the locals. I truly believe that, because since 2012, many this kind of thing had happened, and I think the situations of Rohingya in Malaysia is very scary. And even I am quite very careful to talk about it, because in the end, people in the ground is the one who get affected. You can't even say something is real, and many people out there thinks that when, especially me speaking up, the current situations of Rohingya in Malaysia, about the hate crime and xenophobia and things like that, they think that Rohingyas are ungrateful. They think that we are against the law, we are against the government, we are bringing we are shaming it, we kind of like kacang lupa kulit, things like that. Actually, that's not the reality. The reality of example, me speaking up or other people speaking up about the refugees and this and that, is because we want to create a safer place for everyone, because we want to bring peace in a society, and bring the real reality that these people will be in the country, you accept it or not, for temporary or for long, I don't know for how long, until the government of Myanmar accept these people back, or they find second other opportunities to get resettled. All the refugees, almost everyone that I know, they are in Malaysia for temporary. They just there to contribute to the country, because they are already there, and at the same time they are hoping and praying and working hard to find the alternative solution for them. So I think hating them, or just sharing the fake news around, I think is not the solutions. And just because the share button is easy, I think it might make us feel good that we have no information and we are sharing it, but in the ground, it's really people in the ground being affected. So yeah, thanks.
And like dealing with hate speech and misinformation, I mean, in my opinion, it requires like concerted efforts from different parties, right? The general public, the government, the media, etc. So my question to Suzanne is, based on your observations, how effective has the government, civil society, the media, how effective have these three actors been in terms of dealing with hate speech and misinformation on social media, or in traditional media as well?
I think for my side, we don't have much experience, past experience working with, I would say, like the government or the policymakers. So we are a very independent grassroots organization, I would say, where, if you want to say in layman terms, we're just trying to empower as many family as possible, one family at a time. Our strength is not really in pushing for policy. So what we would say is, but in the past 4 years, we have seen media playing a huge role, where media starts to highlight more of the different side of the story of refugees. So instead of just media highlighting negative negative news or even news about fighting for rights. They also highlight some of the more positive stories, some of the strength that they have. And I think the most recent media release that we were involved in is by Kettler. It talks about how many people have left their home to come build our F&B business. So it's basically highlighting about different food from different countries and how the chefs are all from different countries, and they are now here in Malaysia. So I would say ultimately, I think that I always believe that change comes from both ways. There's change. I always believe that change comes in both ways, where there is a top down and a bottom up approach, where top down is the policymaker enforcing change, and the bottom up is the people asking for a change. And I believe that change will truly happen when the top down and the bottom up happens and meet in between. Because just imagine, for example, if today the policymaker says, okay, right now all refugees can work legally, it might not be a positive thing, because the people, Malaysians might not be ready yet, and there might be a negative backlash. I mean, I'm just assuming it might be. Or if the people are fighting for it, but the policymakers don't see the same vision, it won't happen as well. So I believe that both ways needs to work. So for example, Elise from Tenaga Nita, you work closer to the policymakers than we do, because honestly, we are not very involved in that. But we focus a lot on ground awareness, where through food, we try to educate people, hey, this is mandi rice, and by the way, this is cooked by Dahlia from Gaza, and this is what happened to her. That's why she's here in Malaysia. We try to use social media and our food and our stories to bring out all this awareness to people. And I believe that this is where we can do the bottom-up approach, because I believe that the voices of the people is also very important. It's also very strong. And if all of us work our parts, some work with the policymakers, some work on spreading awareness, some work with the community directly, that is where we can have like a change happening together. And so that's my view.
And Mahda, did you want to add something to that as well?
Oh no, I think Suzanne said it very well, and I like what Suzanne said it, that we need to work together. The CSO, we need to work together as well. But yeah, I think if on the question whether like countering hate speech and all that, is it like the hate speech are happening on social media? That's where it's all happening. It's just there, a group of people who have really a lot of time on their hands, usually keyboard warriors, just going out there. There's a small group of people, but the government itself, I think on April 27, Senior Minister Dr. Sri Ismail Yaakob, expressed sympathy for that, what happened, and a call for nation to be peaceful and considerate while avoiding allegation that can torment anger. And then 84 organizations in Malaysia have signed a joint letter concerning the threat of violence and hate speech directed at ethnic Rohingya refugees. Some of the signatories, including Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International Malaysia, Article 19, and then with the media, like Suzanne was saying, it doesn't really sensationalize the news, it focus on the positive news. And you have to understand as well, the media maybe at that time, was more concerned about COVID news. That's a lot of media space was taken up by COVID news when all this sentiment happened. So yeah, I think, but at every level we can do, like that's why I said I like the idea where Susan at least can do can be the do the advocacy with the government, can be the pressure group on the government. We work with community, I work directly with education. I can, for instance, and then Suzanne work with entrepreneurship, building business. So an individual Malaysian, what they can do now is just like Elise said earlier, the beautiful about Malaysia is we accept the variety in our, the differences between us. And the refugee is here, they're here for a long time, we don't know when they're coming back. So it's about time that the Malaysian take this opportunity, take this time to learn, because it's a two-way thing for them to integrate. We need to learn about them, their culture, their background, their history, so these are the individual steps, and also share these stories with other Malaysians, so that Malaysians know, that we are very kind people. Malaysians are actually very kind and generous population. We should be proud of that, and this is our qualities since early on. These are qualities of our forefathers early on, in this country have always been sharing the countries with other, whether they're migrant, whether they're refugee. So, individual Malaysia can also go to counter this hate speech by telling, by standing up to those who speak, because the numbers are small, but when you do see them, speak to them, speak to them that this is not Malaysia. Malaysia is truly Asia. We can very accepting. That's our mantra, isn't it?
Ayman?
Yes.
Just a small thing. I think when we talk about top-down, bottom-up, it's a concept or an approach. When you go to the details, then it's not that easy. When you talk about bottom-up, there are several levels at the bottom also. You have community leaders, you have religious leaders, you have, institutions at that level. And we really have to understand how it works. I work a lot with the mosque community. I talk to imams. I talk to the committees of mosque so that they will pass the message. But it doesn't stay at that. We have a lot of retirees, pensioners who are around the community. They have some influence because they are very senior people. They've got certain kind of positions. So you really have to be embedded in those kind of discussion at that so-called bottom level. And also at the top level, if we are talking about top down, you have bureaucrats, you have politicians, you have the executives and the legislatives. It's we really have to sit down and strategize. How do we communicate with these people? You either can send a memorandum to the prime minister and also to the cabinet. That gets stuck sometimes. So it's really a struggle to talk to them. And also with the 222 member parliaments plus about 500 statesmen, state assemblymen, there's a whole lot of things. I mean, Tenaga Nita, you are all well versed with this kind of advocacy. But at our level, we are trying to put people with certain groups to be engaged and, really pushing our views and also our proposals. So when Sharifa was talking about, it's very difficult for people to just understand a very simple thing now. She has been around for 21 years. She's already a Malaysian. She's the conscience, the soul is there. Although she knows very well that she belongs to another place, and if things are well, she would definitely like to be in her own country. But since she's been here for 21 years, and then you have many. When I went around, there are people like even 40 years already here, and yet they have been stigmatized with this recent hate speech. So what I do not hear now is prominent people speaking out. The muftis are not really speaking out, and then we have the agencies, people who are leading certain agencies. We have state governments. Recently, I had a discussion on the home community-based protection program with UNHCR. We had in a kampung. I called the state government of Perlis, Penang, and Kedah. They failed to come. I said, the state government has a big role to play because everybody, all of them are in places in the states, and they have to have a kind of approach how to, organize things so that it become much more healthier, much more interaction, as you're saying about these varieties and diversities. The state government are not really, into this. So they just say anything to do with illegal migrants or refugees, we push it to the federal government. I think the time is to come where state governments have to come into the picture and talk to us, talk to the advocacy organization and all the organizations that we are working with. So I think we have to see it in this complexity and work together with all the NGOs.
And addressing the kind of challenges that refugees face, right, it requires perhaps intergovernmental cooperation. It's not just the Malaysian government, it's several other countries, right? They have to deal with this together. So my question is, what is ASEAN doing to deal with the issue? And how are there any kind of gaps that can be addressed in terms of our regional response to the refugee situation in Southeast Asia? I would like to address that to Sharifah.
I think Chigu Asmi can answer this very well. But from my perspective, I think it have done very little, and it have to, I have been asked this question many times that, like, I think there are a lot of discussions around, within the ASEAN and, people there. I think the discussion, it shouldn't be just discussion. I think the action have to be, really put in and play. When I ask this question, people from the ASEAN, they say that, we've been going to Bangladesh camp, example, doing the research, trying to talk to the this and that. I think they know very well what they have to do. First of all, they, the non-interference policy, can't be just an excuse. So this issue have to be really put in action rather than just discussion, and funding goes, into discussion and discussion. I think we Rohingya people are tired of waiting. We want justice. I think it's not fair for us to die in waiting for the justice. So action has to be played, and our situation is very crucial. We can't wait anymore, and we really appealing to everyone. Help us return home. There is no home better than home, and it's very heartbreaking. And I don't know how to say this. Is that the acceptance of Rohingya, in the host countries is very less, and we have no other way than return home. It seems that way. So help us return home. That's what I will say. And our hope is there, and we just want to go home. Thank you.
Cikgu Azmi, can you add some of your thoughts to the question as well regarding ASEAN's response to the situation? You're on mute, sorry.
Sorry. I agree with Sharifah. Very little has been done in a concrete way. There's a lot of summits, a lot of leaders talking periodically among them, making declarations and whatnot. But action-wise, it is highly, questionable about the real seriousness of the leaders of ASEAN. They are still keeping to this notion of non-interference. ASEAN has been binded with this since it came in its inception. And Myanmar is probably the second youngest of the membership of the ASEAN after Timor-Leste. So Myanmar was, I was talking to Tun Mahathir, why did you take the move to ask Myanmar to be accepted as a member? The word that was thrown out by him, and it started to be discussed by ASEAN leaders, is what they call a constructive engagement. It sounds good. I mean, we want it to be diplomatic. We want it to be, on the table. But if you look at the reality in Myanmar, it's the worst kind of atrocities you ever seen in this modern history. It has been termed as, Rohingya is the most serious ethnic persecution ever. So meaning that despite of this so-called non-interference, and we have to deal diplomatically with constructive engagement, all of a sudden Dr. Mahathir told me, I regret it. I wish I did not motion Myanmar to come in. He didn't expect that Myanmar is such. So there is this this thing about the geopolitical hegemony of what's happening in Myanmar. It's got some powers behind it, and there's this kind of negotiation that really is in the interest of certain powers. It's not really for giving justice to the Rohingyas. So my summarized view on ASEAN, it is very disappointing, but we are not losing hope. It is the ASEAN people that has to rise. Let's not wait for the ASEAN government to do anything. It's the ASEAN people. Of course, we cannot do as much. I mean, we can't send peace keeping troops inside. I mean, it's not within our jurisdiction. But the voices of the ASEAN people must be very loud. When I did this 2017 so-called flotilla, we were on the sea for 23 days. We went to Myanmar to, give the food assistance to everyone, not only the Rohingya camps, the IDP, also the Buddhists. And then we went to Chittagong, then to go into the camps. The support was huge. I mean, we had 82 countries on board. And, government was giving all the facilitation. The ship was given to us, the whole arrangement of the ports, and making sure that we are safe on the sea. Meaning that the spirit was there. The people was really behind it. The government just have to submit to this. They have no choice because they think about the survivor, the political survivor. But we was very genuine, and therefore the government has complied, and then we used that. But it stopped at that, and I was a bit upset because the groups didn't continue further. So I think the ASEAN people, name of people, really the ASEAN people, the ASEAN community, we have to organize. We have to talk to all among us and ex-politicians and ex-ministers who are very sympathetic with Rohingyas. We have to come forward this under the banner of ASEAN and ASEAN Plus with other countries. So that's the thing that we should be doing. Thank you.
All right, so we have about 8 minutes left. Time really flies, right? So I want to get some concluding remarks around the table. So maybe starting from Mahda, and for everyone, what do you think the future holds for refugees in Malaysia, and how can Malaysians help and do better?
Oh, I know, like I think that's a great future for the refugees here. I think like this prejudice that we're talking about today, I think it's a phase, and I hope I'm not wrong. Because Malaysian generally, I believe I'm not talking about just before they was talking about ASEAN government policy. Like I said, we on the ground on the ground, we don't really we try to follow as much as possible, but don't really hope on that. We just have to move along with the capacity that we have. We gather our resources, and like I say, and if we do this, we have platforms like this, where this thing can be talked about, and people can take this on. I mean, it doesn't end here. It starts right here. So those, the viewers that you guys are listening, learn more about refugee issues. Learn more about their struggle. Bring it out, to your friends, your family, and just share it. I mean, as much as you can. If you're creative people, make some music, make some art, to raise more awareness. Because actually at the end of the day, we are the people who can do a lot without even without any I mean, it'd be great to have that government assistance on that, but we can do a lot. Even CSOs, my fellow CSOs here, we should by now have an association of refugee carers, for instance, so that we can build our capacity. A lot of refugees need into trauma. They need counseling, and a lot of us, even I can. We don't have the capacity to do that. We don't have the capacity financially to get psychologists. But if we can be stronger as an organization, we can reach out to more Malaysian. And I see it's I see there's a good future for refugees in Malaysia. I don't think Malaysians are very kind people now. The majority of Malaysians are very kind, very generous, and very sympathetic. From refugee, from early on, from the first refugee influx of Palestinian issues, and then the Bosnian. So it's just like we need to talk more. Those who are listening, talk, so that the silent majority, that we are not silent anymore, and we can shut down the noise of the small minority that are troublemakers. So yeah, thank you. That's my thought. And follow Instagram.
And Suzanne, what your concluding remarks?
For me, I would say that from when I first started working with refugees 7 years ago, things have definitely, honestly improved. The awareness is more out there than 7 years ago. When you talk about refugees, people will ask you, "Oh, do we have refugees in Malaysia?" But I think right now the awareness have increased more, and I think moving forward with so many efforts coming out, with so many efforts being pushed, I think I hope that the awareness will continue to increase. And I do agree with Mada that Malaysians are generally actually very kind. And there was one time we visited Langkawi, and they say the locals were the one helping to build out the refugee school. Locals were the one like working together. And even with the chef that we have in KL, the neighbors have always been watching out for them. And even when sometimes they get bullied by some people, they will stand up for them. So I think we can move towards a more positive future, but my final remarks will be really to get ourselves educated. When we see news on social media, always do fact check and always remember that what we see might not be the truth. For example, one of the rumors that went around was that Rohingyas get money from the government every month. It went viral on WhatsApp, and that's not true. So I think we should always stay educated. That's our responsibility as a human being. Yeah.
And final remarks from Elise.
I think a lot of the CSOs who are working with refugee communities often focus on community empowerment, right, with the refugees that we partner with. I think in our efforts to advocate with public, with policymakers, we should also focus a lot on community empowerment of our local communities as well. I think sometimes you must accept that not everyone has the same lived realities as ourselves or refugees that we're trying to support, to be able to understand what these issues really are about. A lot of Malaysians have had their rights and privileges for a very long time. We've not had to endure conflict or extreme persecution the way a lot of refugees have. So we must not only just be patient, but we should look in more non-conventional ways of how to facilitate their journeys into building their capacity to understand. We can't force ideas, values, and these stories down people's throat if they aren't able to even understand it from the first place. A lot of Malaysians have lived in a very dark box, and we're trying to show them a light that they don't have the ability to understand just yet. So I think in all our efforts to advocate with whoever, all the stakeholders, we need to really map out what are the issues, what are realities, and then come together to have a very, very comprehensive approach to it. I think all around, so from whether it's top, bottom up, to, just all the way, we have some people who are more aggressive in our advocacy, then we have some people who are more diplomatic. We need to have a very, very comprehensive approach. And I don't think we should expect results this year or next year. We all must be really invested to put in years of our lives, because what we're trying to do is have paradigm shift. We're trying to change society into not just saying that I support this movement on the surface, but we want them to also feel it as their real principles, their real integrity. And going back to the community empowerment of local communities, I think we should also focus on letting the viewers, Malaysians, anyone who supports this cause, to feel empowered as an individual, but as well as a collective, to be a part of this, to be a part of movements that are bigger than themselves, because we really can't do it without every single person. We need to not just be more conscious about what we're pushing forward, but also about our own strategies. It's not as simple as just shouting and expecting people to accept it, but the delivery of everything and the teamwork that we're putting in together.
So we have about 1 more minute left. Briefly, Mr. Azmi and Sharifah, what are your final thoughts before we conclude?
Malaysia is going to celebrate our independence with this theme. It's called Malaysia Prihatin. We have to define this to people. Prihatin, they're talking about COVID-19, but I think Prihatin is more than that. It's about how to be together with other people, how to understand and mutually, build this country together, whether they are foreigners, whether they're migrants or not. We need a country that is having a space for people to live as human beings. Thank you.
And Sharifah?
I agree with the Ellies. Everyone have said just now that Malaysian are very prihatin, and I have people in my life, that very, very nice. Like, I think I haven't met anyone as nice as them, like Nasha, who's been helping me with RWD, and Ustazah Fatia, and there are many other, Ustazah Sarah, there are many other Malaysian, come together to help the people, marginalized people, the community. And, I believe it's just the minority, is the one who, doing the noise on the social media. Sorry, they are the minority. The majority of the people are very, very kind, very, very sympathetic. And I'm very blessed to be, spend my life in Malaysia, and I carry these people in my life. I'm forever grateful to these people and Malaysia, and I think it will be with me forever, and even it will continue to my family, to my children, I believe so. So yeah, it just want to say that the virus shouldn't kill our humanity. We kill the virus together with the positivity and togetherness and kindness to each other, and let's maintain that. And there's always a better day for everyone, and this is just a test, I think, for everybody, including Rohingya people. So we Rohingya people don't lose hope that there will be a better day in Malaysia. We will be able to go back to our country, and we just grateful to everything and to everyone. Thank you, and Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you very much, Sharifah. And unfortunately, we run out of time. I'd like to say thank you to every member of our panel today, Mahda, Suzanne, Elise, Cikgu Azmi, and Sharifah, for sharing your thoughts and your opinions on the questions that I know that we're addressing today. And to our viewers on Facebook, thank you for joining us, and thank you for sending in your questions and comments. We hope that this has been a fruitful and an insightful conversation for every one of us. So goodbye and have a good day.